US and Iran swap prisoners in a Qatar-mediated deal. WHO calls on China to offer transparency regarding COVID-19 origins. British government to hike visa fees from 4th of October. Lithium production through string technology. Recently, Earth was hit by a strong coronal mass ejection. Global attention to Rohingyas' need is rapidly diminishing. Sheikh Hasina. G4 countries call for expansion of UN Security Council. UN must lead by example to bring women in leadership position. Sheikh Hasina. The Women's Reservation Bill in India was highly appreciated by UN High Commissioner for Human Rights. Humanity facing unprecedented global toxic emergency. Five US detainees flew out of Iran in a swap for five Iranians held in US in a rare deal between the arch enemies that also unfroze $6 billion of Tehran's fund. A plane sent by mediator Qatar flew the five US citizens and two of their relatives out of Tehran soon after both sides received confirmation the fund had been transferred to accounts in Doha. At the same time, two of five Iranians landed in Qatar, a US official said, adding that three others have opted out to return to Iran. The deal, after months of talks in Qatar, removes a major irritant between US and Iran. A senior US administration official said the deal did not change Washington's adversarial relationship with Tehran, but the door was open for diplomacy on Iran's nuclear program. Under the deal, Qatar will ensure the cash is spent on humanitarian goods and not items under US sanctions. The Director General of World Health Organization, Tedros Adhanom, has called on China to offer great transparency regarding the origins of COVID-19 and express readiness to dispatch a second investigative team to examine the matter. The genesis of pandemic remains unclear, almost 4 years after the initial cases were reported at Wuhan in China. The international community has been unable to determine with certainty the origins of COVID-19 pandemic. The WHO conducted its first investigation into the origins of COVID-19 in China in early 2021 but returned with an inconclusive report citing a lack of cooperation from Beijing. The British government on Saturday announced an increase in visa fees effective from 4th of October. The cost of a visit visa for under 6 months will rise by GBP 15 and student visas will be GBP 127, more expensive for travelers from around the world including those from India. The changes are aimed at meeting country's public sector wage increase and are expected to raise over GBP 1 billion. The fee increase applies to various visa categories and is subject to parliamentary approval. The UK Home Office confirmed that these changes introduced through legislation in Parliament on Friday will result in the cost of a visit visa for less than 6 months rising to GBP 115. Additionally, the fee for applying for a student visa from outside the UK will increase to GBP 490, matching the amount charged for in-country applications. This adjustment follows the announcement made by British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak in July that visa fees and health surcharges, which contribute to UK state-funded, would rise significantly to accommodate increases in public sector wages. Researchers at the University of Princeton have developed a technique that can drastically reduce the amount of land and time needed for the production of lithium. A set of porous fibers twisted into strings and engineered to have a water loving core and water repelling surface. When one end is dipped in a salt water solution, the water travels up the string because of capillary action. Then the water evaporates quickly from the string surface. This leaves behind salt ions such as sodium and lithium. The water will continue to evaporate like this as salts become increasingly concentrated, eventually forming sodium chloride and lithium chloride crystals. The strings do not just concentrate on salts. Since lithium and sodium have different physical properties, they crystallizes at different locations on the strings. Sodium with its low solubility crystallizes on the lower part, while highly soluble lithium salts crystallizes near the top. A large majority of lithium produced in the world is extracted from brine reservoirs located in salt flats. Conventional methods of extraction rely on the series of massive evaporation ponds that concentrate lithium from saltwater reservoirs and salt flats of underground aquifers. This method of production can require hundreds of square kilometers, and it often takes months or even years to produce lithium that can be used in batteries. It is commercially viable in a few locations around the world. Earth was hit by a strong coronal mass ejection CME. CMEs are large expulsion of plasma and magnetic fields from sun's corona that propagate outward into interplanetary space. During a CME, the sun releases a colossal amount of material, including electrons, protons, and heavier ions, as well as magnetic fields. This ejected material travels at high speeds into space. CMEs are typically triggered by the destabilization of sun's magnetic fields. The exact mechanism are complex, but they often involve the reconfiguration or disruption of magnetic loops on sun's surface. CMEs are distinct from solar flares, although they often occur together. Solar flares are sudden and intense bursts of energy and radiation, whereas CMEs involve the expulsion of solar material. The interaction between CME's magnetic fields and Earth's magnetosphere can lead to geomagnetic storms. This can disrupt satellite communications, navigation systems, and even power grids. CMEs can cause spectacular display of northern and southern lights, also known as auroras, by energizing particles in Earth's atmosphere. Astronauts in space or passengers on high altitude flights can be exposed to elevated levels of radiation during a CME event. September 17, 1908, the first fatality involving powered flight occurred as a biplane piloted by Orville Wright fell from a height of 75 feet, killing Thomas E. Selfridge, his 26-year-old passenger. A crowd of nearly 2,000 spectators at Fort Myer, Virginia, observed the crash of the plane, which was being tested for possible military use. Wright himself was seriously injured. September 18, 1810, Chile declared its independence from Spain after 269 years as a colony. September 19, 1893, New Zealand became the first country to grant women the right to vote. Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina on Thursday admitted that global attention to Rohingyas' need is rapidly diminishing. This is evident in the increasing funding gaps in the humanitarian response plan. Sheikh Hasina was speaking in New York at the 78th United Nations General Assembly high level side event titled Have They Forgotten Us? Reports UNB. The Bangladesh PM said that the Rohingya issue has now reached a point of stagnation. Not a single displaced Rohingya has been able to return to their homes in Myanmar in the last 6 years. Ms. Hasina said that Rohingyas' prolonged presence in Bangladesh is not only pushing them further into hopelessness, it is also making the situation in Bangladesh precarious. The host community has become a victim of their own generosity, she said. Aside from that, she mentioned that the prolonged presence of Rohingyas has entailed grave social, economic, and security repercussions for Bangladesh and neighboring countries. The G4 countries India, Brazil, Japan, and Germany have reiterated that expansion of UN Security Council in both permanent and non-permanent categories is essential to make the body more representative, legitimate, effective, and efficient. The foreign ministers of Brazil, Germany, Japan, and Secretary West External Affairs Ministry Sanjay Verma met on the margins of 78th section of United Nations General Assembly. They underscored that multilateralism is under significant strain due to multiple and complex crises. In a joint press statement, the G4 nations said that the UN Security Council's inability to effectively and timely address contemporary global challenges reinforces the urgent need for its comprehensive reform. The ministers emphasized the renewed momentum to advance the discussion on this critical issue. They agreed on the need to enhance the role and participation of developing countries in the Security Council, both in the permanent and non permanent categories of the members. Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina on Wednesday said at the United Nations headquarters, New York, that UN should lead by example to bring women in leadership position. Addressing at the annual meeting of UNGA platform of Women Leaders section, Ms. Hasina stressed that we need to elevate our narrative from participation to leadership, and the UN must lead by example. It is regrettable that no woman has so far been appointed as UN Secretary General. Time has come. We will have one woman UN Secretary General soon, Bangladesh PM said. She said that women must be in leadership position to influence decision to make positive impacts in the lives of other women. The United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, has welcomed the passage of Women's Reservation Bill in India, which will reserve one third of seats in the country's parliament and state assemblies for women. These historic measures would constitutionally enshrine women's representation in parliament and will be a game changing step in defending women's right to participation and gender equality in India. The bill was passed by both houses of parliament. The High Commissioner calls on the government to implement new system as soon as possible, alongside the existing reservation for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. According to the spokesperson of UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Ravina Shamdasani, the UN High Commissioner called on parliamentarians around the world to adopt legislative measures, including, where necessary, general quotas, in order to ensure women's voices are the center of their nation's political discourse in full parity with others. The fifth section of International Conference on Chemical Management, organized by UN Environment Programme UNEP and hosted by Germany, kicks off in Bonn on Monday. This international conference is expected to be a watershed moment for international cooperation on chemicals and waste, said a statement released by the group of more than 30 experts. It is a once in a generation opportunity to deliver a robust outcome to confront the global toxic tide. They urge those attending the conference to be guided by human rights principle in line with a post 2020 global policy framework on the sound management of chemicals and waste. According to the experts, the threats of infertility, deadly illnesses, neurological and other disabilities resulting from exposure to hazardous chemicals and waste reveal the widespread and systematic denial of basic human rights for countless persons and groups in vulnerable situations. The experts went on to list people who are mostly exposed to these toxic environments, including workers, women, and children, the poor, and indigenous people. Sir William Gerald Golding was a British novelist, playwright, and poet, best known for his debut novel, Lord of the Flies, 1954. He published another 12 volumes of fiction in his lifetime. In 1980, he was awarded the Booker Prize for Rites of Passage, the first novel in what became his C trilogy. As a result of his contribution to literature, Golding was knighted in 1988. He was a fellow of Royal Society of Literature. In 2008, the Times ranked Golding third on its list of the 50 greatest British writers since 1945. Golding was appointed a Knight Bachelor in 1988 birthday honors. In September 1993, only a few months after his unexpected death, the first International William Golding Conference was held in France.